Its consequences was that essentially I left ABC after it. I mean, I had been asked by an ABC executive, and I've never gone to the names, so I won't hear either. But a Cap Cities executive had asked me to outline what I thought were the good points and the bad points, maybe that's extreme, but questionable points, about the way ABC News was being run. The point was that Cap Cities had essentially decided that Roon was not their guy anymore. He was going, it's been written about in other places, he was going through some kind of a crisis in which decisions weren't being made. We were suddenly adrift. I was taken out for lunch by one of the Cap Cities people who essentially said to me that management was of the opinion that Roon's tenure was going to end. And that I was the likely to be the preferred candidate for management. So that was the background of why I undertook to write what essentially was a critique of the way ABC News was being run and its methodology. I think it was called Days of Affluence, Days of Penury, or maybe it was Days of Penury, I love that word, penury. What I wrote was accurate, but obviously was inflammatory.
And what was it? What was the thrust?
Well, that management had essentially lost control of the way the news could be gathered, should be gathered, can be presented, and new ideas could be bubbling up and things like that. It's been a while since I've read it, I must say. It's not exactly my favorite reading place. But I circulated it. I had written it in the form of a piece for a trade magazine. The name of the trade magazine now escapes me, but the editor had said, would I write, if I were writing something, he'd like to publish it. So I really wrote it for internal account, but I gave it to him as well. I don't think he ever printed it, but it certainly, I did not hide it under any bushel basket, if you will.
How was this received, and how did this play out?
Outrage.
On the part of Arledge?
Oh yeah, and you know.
Can you describe? Was there a? Did he call you into his office? Was there a?
He suspended me. I mean, I was in the control room at 2020, and I got a phone call from his secretary saying Roon would like to see you. And I came up and he said, I'm suspending you with pay. And I went away for about 6-8 weeks while I figured out what I wanted to do and what he wanted to do. And then I got a phone call from David Burke, who was his assistant, saying, let's have lunch. It's all very adult, if you will.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, we want you to come back. You're not going to come back to do 2020 anymore, but we want you to come back to finish up these projects that you're working on. And one of them was the Blessings of Liberty 3-hour program.
So was it, and that was something that was not so much in Arledge's domain? That was
no, it was mainly. Roon and David Burke and others always acknowledged that I was a really, this is sounding immodest, but a superior producer.
Right.
And it was, you know, because I said to them, I'll quit. I'm not I'll quit. I mean, if we're not going to go anywhere, let me go find another job. And they said, no, we're not going to let that happen.
Yeah.
There had been a meeting in New York, maybe a dozen producers and news executives, at which this subject was discussed. And it was as a result of that meeting that I put down on paper my views of what I was hearing at this meeting, which was that nothing was going to happen. And you know, I've used this image a number of times that I left an awful lot of my stomach lining on the floors of edit rooms and control rooms. So you develop a certain proprietary sense of the company you work for, if you care about it. And I think all of us who worked there at that time cared about it. We had seen come from nowhere to being number one, and now we're watching it slip away. I felt.